everybody. My name is Air Howard, and I am a public relations major here at Texas State University. I'm going to be graduating in spring 2021, and I am a member of the Mass Comm Week events team. And I want to thank all of you guys for joining us here live for this awesome panel today. And those of you who are going to be watching asynchronous later, I want to thank you for joining us. I'd also like to introduce our featured speaker, Charles Ellis. He is the chair of Global Diversity and Council on Diversity and Inclusion at Condé Nast. And that's a pretty powerful title considering the current circumstances. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor, but I don't take it lightly. I'll say that. So yeah, this is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Do you want to introduce yourself, give yourself a little background?
Sure. My name is Charles Ellis. I'm 30, for context. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. And I came sort of into this world via the dreams that I had, and like a lot of you guys have, and a lot of the ambitions that come along with, and sort of wanting to be a writer and wanting to, be in fashion and, just sort of like live that movie life that you guys saw in all those films. But I think as just a quick proper intro, I came into it and I learned a lot of things along the way, and I got my heart broken along the way. But what I will say is that I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about, sort of the nuances of this ever-changing industry. And because of that, and trusting the process and trusting myself throughout that process, I think I ended up in a really good place and able to affect areas of the industry that I initially set out to affect in the first place. So full circle moment, but it just didn't happen the way I thought it was going to. So yeah.
That's
I guess
really
we'll
good.
get into that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to get into it today.
Yeah.
So before we really jump in, I want to go through the journey of how you got where you are. So is there anything key that prepared you for your career? And then do you want to restate like your title and what you're doing right now?
Sure. Well, first off, I have like 3 different titles, but I am the chair of our Global Diversity Council on Diversity and Inclusion. I chair our Black Employee Network, which is called Noir, which is essentially a community of 145 very, very talented Black staff that we have across the United States. And we're looking to expand that globally in the next couple of months as our company rolls out its global D&I strategy. And then I also work as a digital account manager, sort of working with our sales and marketing teams, et cetera. So it's a lot of hats. But thinking back to, how much time do we have for that? But no, thinking back to what prepared me, I think it was just wanting to be a part of this world. I think I started out wanting to tell stories, being fascinated with fashion, and watching all those films like Devil Wears Prada and 13 Going on 30, and it's sort of it's a caricature, yes, and it'll always tell you that, but to actually come into this space, into this world, and see it happen in real life, it's not only an eye-opener, it's like, okay, I really have to really sit back and think about what I really want for myself, because this is like the truth, like things that these people went through, the struggles, the being poor, all of that. It's like, it really does come with the territory. And as you sort of navigate it, despite whatever kind of background you came from, whether your parents had money, whether they didn't, it's a real strong moment of emotional reckoning to ask yourself, how far do I want to go with this? I think for me, like I said, I started off writing when I was in high school, and I had these really crazy delusions of grandeur that I was just this like huge writing star. It sounds crazy, but you have to big up yourself and make yourself feel like you got something going on. But by the time I was in high school, we went on this class trip to New York, and we got here and we like went to all these fashion houses and met with all these people, and it was a school sponsored trip, would not have been able to go any other way. But it was a moment when I realized for myself, okay, this is where I see myself. This is what I want to do. And, it was those experiences that sort of told me like, this is possible, but you're going to have to work for it. I didn't know what that meant at that time. But once I graduated high school, I had a bit of a setback where I wasn't able to like go and jump to New York immediately. So I went to Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan, which is where I got my degree from. And I started with our, journalism department, and you got started with your gen ed courses and you navigated through. But for me, it was like, no, we're gonna make the best of this. We're gonna keep writing. We're gonna do a school newspaper column. We're gonna meet everybody we can meet, and it was really just about networking and expanding and making the best of whatever situation I was in. And so, fortunately, I applied for the school in New York that I found while I was here that for that class trip. And I got accepted, and they were like, well, you have to fulfill a math requirement. So I came to New York, did the math requirement, failed it miserably. I mean, the math test they did had me do, I failed it miserably. And I had like take a community college math course to fulfill it. I got a 68 in the course, had to beg the professor to give me a 70. And like I said, I just hated math, like bottom line. But, as far as writing was concerned, once I got here, it was a true going away college experience, the dorms, the meeting new people. And I'm telling you the story because it's crazy, but there's so much serendipity that goes into my story that I think if you really want something, you're just going to have to learn how to endure. And I give that piece of advice to all of you. So the first piece I'll say is that I took a work study job while I was here in the Black Studies office. And this girl, she comes by me and we're just talking, shooting the breeze. And she said she started an internship at Glamour, which is a part of Condé Nast. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, that's interesting. I never would want to work at Glamour. That's not fun. But, and she's like, I said, how did you get it? And she said, well, I, ran across this girl who did it she was a Teen Vogue intern and blah, blah, and she got me hired. And I was like, all right, cool. So I let it go. And about a month later, I saw this posting on this website that said there was a Glamour internship, application. So I filled it out. And about a month later, I got a call that said, hey, would you be willing to interview? Mind you, I'm home for Christmas at this point. I'm in Michigan. And I was like, should I fly back to New York for this crappy interview for this internship that I don't really want to do? And I'm like, it's Condé Nast, go do it. So I flew back, did the internship, got the job that day. They're like, we'd love to have you start at the end of January when you get back. So I started a month later, and it was awful. Like, it was literally an experience. It was like working in the fashion closet, moving clothes around, but it was the first chance for me to really see what this company was about. Who were these people? How do these clothes come into these shoots? How do these magazines come together? What does this really mean? You're meeting editors in chief, you're going to fashion shows. It was like, this huge like slap. So there was that experience. And then I moved back to Michigan because financially things just got crazy, but I kept interning. So I came back and interned again in the summer. I was trying to intern at Vogue because that's where I'd always wanted to work. And a piece of advice here, when someone tells you you're overqualified for something, don't believe them, just move on. Just let it go and move on. Because I had, at that point, I told you I had written for the school newspapers. I had written for, so many different things that I have to do in college already. So when I got to this internship, I came in with clips and clips and clips, and they're like, this is too much. We have nothing to teach you. That's a lie. It was Vogue. There's always something to teach you. Okay. So, that was heartbreak to hear because I didn't want to fight them about it. I said, I'll accept that. But luckily, I saw there was another internship at W, which was another magazine. And I applied for that. Me and the hiring manager got along really, really well. And she said, I'd love to have you as my intern. So I'm in a car, like kicking and screaming in Michigan in the snow. Like, I can't, this is going to happen for me. So I get there. It's for the editor in chief of the magazine. It's in his office. And I got a chance to write. I got a chance to do shoots. I got a chance to, network and handle calendars and schedules. It was like, truly a different experience than what I went through at Glamour. And it was a chance to really get FaceTime with some really key players here, some people who really like propelled my career forward and gave me some boosts of confidence. And one piece of advice that I got from that job was there's always going to be a place for you if you work really hard and you really make yourself known and you dedicate yourself to what you're doing. And, true, it was some long hours that I didn't have to do, but, I dedicated myself to that internship really, really well. And, a lot of references came as a result of, so that, after my boss, she had left because her grandfather had passed away, rest his soul. And they were like, we would love to hire you, but you haven't graduated. So you need to go graduate. And I graduated that December. So I came back to Michigan, graduated, called them. They said, we can't do anything for you, basically. So I sat there for about 4 months and I was sad. And this is the story that I want to tell everybody. So I'm in Michigan one morning and I saw this posting for this GQ fashion closet, freelance full-time job. And I'm like, hey, should I apply for this? Why not? So I applied for it, and it's like I sent it in like 6 a.m. on a Monday, and I was over my best friend's house. I spent the night there. I sent it and woke up, went back to sleep. My grandfather had come and picked me up. We went to breakfast. We're at that breakfast. I get an email saying, "Hey, can you come into this for this interview tomorrow?" Mind you, I'm in Michigan. Okay, so I'm like, do I go to this interview in New York tomorrow? And mind you, the flight was $100. I was like, yeah, we have to do this. We have to do this. So I put some clothes in a bag, got to the airport, huge rainstorms hit. They canceled the flight that night. Luckily enough, my aunt worked there. She was able to pull some strings at the airport. She was able to pull some strings. They got me on the 6 a.m. flight, flew out, got to New York, had to go straight from the airport to the office, did 2 rounds of interviews, left, got called back, did another round. My uncle lived in New Jersey, so I spent the night at his house. I fell asleep because I was exhausted because I had been up since 6. I get the call that I got this job at 11 p.m. Mind you, I was asleep. Okay, so I didn't get to go home for like 3 months because I got the job that day, and I had to just start, and it was like 0 to 60, and suddenly you're in Michigan, like eating French toast, and the next day you're like pushing clothes and like looking, meeting all these new people, and it was an experience and it was learning. And so the next year I was there, and it was grueling. It was a lot. My knuckles turned dark because I was crawling on the floor, moving clothes around all day. But what did I do? I wrote, I pitched, I networked, and I made the best of it, and I got out of it what I wanted to get. And that's not to say that any and everybody can do that. But what I will say is, if you are really dedicated to what you want to do, you have to always learn the rooms that you're in. And there's so much politics that goes into this industry, which I really, really hate. But I will say that if you're able to come out successful, it's really going to make a difference in your career. So I was there for about a year, and then I moved back to Michigan. And this is where things sort of got changed up because my mom, she got really sick. So I went home to take care of her. She got well. And I'm like, I need to get back to work here. So it was probably about a year later, and Condé Nast in Michigan had an office, but it was strictly advertising and sales. It was no editorial, no writing, no nothing. It was literally just, ads on a page and selling that. So I said, do I really want to do this? Crap. So I did it, and I got hired just off of, the connections that I had and all the references that I told you guys about. And it went really well, but they laid me off 2 months later because they couldn't keep me because of budgets. But they're like, look, we want to keep you on staff because we really like you. So if there's any place else in the Condé Nast portfolio that you want to go, let us know and we'll try to connect you. So I said, well, there's an Atlanta office. Let's see how that goes. So I went down to Atlanta for 2 years. And what was crazy was while I was in college, I had reached out to this office because I wanted to work there. And they were like, well, look, we don't have any space for you. There's nothing, you don't have a lot of experience. And then to get placed there, by favor and connection, it was like, look at this. Like, this is the world, Anyway, so I'm there for 2 years. It was a wonderful experience. I loved Atlanta. It was great, but they were eventually going to shut down that office just because budgets were being cut, as you could already have told them from what happened in Michigan. So, they're like, well, there's a job opening in New York. Do you want to go back? And I'm like, sure, why not? So they transferred me back, no relocation. I had to figure out on my own, but I came back to New York as a digital account manager, which is where we just left. And I was here for about a year. And during that year's time, I think I realized throughout the entire tenure of my career that there have been a lot of inequities for people of color at this company. And that a lot of the things and a lot of the privileges that I had come to be able to use on my behalf, I was blessed to be able to have them, but it was always by the skin of my teeth. And I tell you this because when I was in Georgia, I was making like $30,000 a year. Okay, that's nothing. And I'll tell you, I was using my mom's food stamps from Michigan to buy food while I was down there. When I was in New York, they were having to send me money to pay for things, to get food to eat, because there was no way to pay for it, making $10 an hour as a freelance assistant. I tell you all this in the backtrack so you can really see the backstory of what all was happening going into that and what really goes into having these careers. But in real life, it's a struggle. And I think being a writer or being in PR or whatever you're doing, it's going to be really, really hard starting out. And I don't want to paint a picture that it's easy, but what I will say is that if there's any way that you can stay in those rooms, to stay in those rooms, because the payoff is really, really great if you really, really want it. So back to New York, we're here. And I noticed, like I said, there were a lot of equitable inequities. And there were a lot of moments where I felt like people of color weren't given the same opportunities as their white counterparts. And you'll notice how the same person who makes 35,000 in Atlanta, like I was struggling, but you have someone in New York who's able to live in the city and have a beautiful apartment in the village, and they're able to stay 3 or 4 years making that same salary. Why? Because their parents are able to afford to help them stay and pay their rent and take care of them. It's not everybody's case, and I don't claim that that is, but I think that story sort of is how a lot of people go from being at the bottom of the totem pole to the top without a lot of hard work, if you will. And I think for all of you students who've really, really done the hard work, who really want to be in this industry, it's a bit harder for you because you have to kind of come in, banging the door down, demanding and, saying, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, on top of managing a personal life and paying bills and getting, so many things. So anyway, I started, a Black employee resource group, so we could share those experiences, so we could talk about them, so we could come together and, have a place of commonality and, so we could essentially grow together and see that how many people have essentially gone through something that we've gone through. And that sort of propelled me through the company, and it gave me a lot of visibility. And so I'll cut to this year. George Floyd was murdered, as you all know. And that was not the first of those sorts of atrocities. Well, it wasn't the last. But I think it was the first time that this company woke up and realized that there's something wrong in this country, and that we as a company had to respond to it because there was anguish and emotional turmoil being felt by the employees on staff, and it wasn't just the Black ones. And because of that, all of these eyes and ears started opening, and all of this attention started being thrown at me and my peers, like, how can we as a company do better? And as you can imagine, that's not my job to tell you, but it's my responsibility to do so as a Black man, to better my experience and the experiences of my peers now that we're all here. And so taking on that and thinking back to, thinking back to a lot of our ancestors, and our family members that have sort of gone through civil rights, or that had gone through struggles from the 60s and 70s and beyond, that were not able to speak or to have a moment of having the company listen to them and take their advice to heart. You sort of have to say, listen, I don't want to do this. I'm emotionally taxed right now, but I feel I need to do this to be responsible for myself and for the next generation. So we took on those responsibilities, and we facilitated trainings, and we facilitated conversations and moments of clarity, and we did programming, and we had town halls about further education, and and it was like a lot of just campaigning, and a lot of speaking uncomfortable truths to people who had probably not heard those things before. And it's a very scary space to be in a lot of ways, because you're sort of creating a new narrative for people to live by. And I'm not sure, a lot of you have probably done a lot of similar things. I talked to Akosua about some of her work, and I'm sure, Air, you've probably done some really great, amazing things too, but it's like, you're just one person, and to have the burden of, from my case, of a 3,000 plus company looking at you, wondering what you think about how we should move forward. It's like, okay, look, I'm just a small, like, man with the vision here, but then you have to say to yourself, no, forget that. I've earned this right to be here. I've been at this company for 10 years, and I've seen it left and right. I've been here from the bottom when I wasn't making $1. And now that I'm making what I do make, I've earned the right to say, this is what we should do, and this is what I've seen, and this is how we need to move forward. And I think the company's been very receptive to that. But I say all that to say, the major mission that I had when I started my career was to do something that's going to change the world positively. And through all these channels and cities and backwards and forwards and things that I've mentioned that I've gone through, I'm at that point in my career, but it looked nothing like what I thought I wanted it to look like. I thought I wanted to be in Paris at Fashion Week and taking pictures and writing and going to expensive dinners. And it looks nothing like that, but the mission has not changed, and the mission has been fulfilled. So I want you all to realize that, yes, write, be creative, be ambitious, be bold, be daring, be great, but never ever forget why you started, why you came, and never turn your nose up at anything, because that one opportunity or thing that you think might be like, oh, I don't want to do this, might be the one thing that's going to open the door and unlock so many other opportunities. Like what I'm doing, I never thought I'd be talking to students, about career paths and trajectories, but I think it's a story to tell, because I know that right now, a lot of the careers that you want may not exist in 10 or 15 years. They may look totally different. Like for me, fashion journalism, that's not a thing right now. It doesn't exist. Everything went social, everything went digital. You have Instagram. Instagram took over all of everything I wanted to do in my career. So now it's like, how do you start from scratch? And there was a moment a couple of years ago when I was just crying at work, like I have no purpose. I hate what I'm doing. I hate everybody here. I need something to put my life into. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, racial inequities, diversity. People need jobs. People are going through struggles. Help them. Be a resource for them. And 2 years later, look where we are. So I hope that was inspiring just from that bit. But I know there are some questions that came about, and I would be so eager to answer them.
Oh, yeah, that was really, really good. I really, really appreciate all
Thank
of
you.
that. So I know you mentioned so that was like your whole career journey, and I want to talk about the Global Diversity Council just a
Yes,
little bit more.
let's do it.
So were you a creator, or like how did the org come about specifically?
So what happened was that had we had a CEO that left, and we had a CEO that started. The CEO that left was a bit more old school, and I don't mean that in a negative or positive way. He just had a way of how he dealt with the business, and something like this probably would not have existed, and we had a new CEO that came in from a different company that also had a similar entity as a Global Diversity Council. So he said, well, listen, let's bring that same structure in here. Let's implement it and see how it works. So the Global Diversity Council for D&I was in its formation supposed to be a 20-person committee. We have 12 markets right now across the globe. I'll just name them: the US, Mexico, Brazil, UK, US. UK, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, India, Japan, Taiwan, and somewhere else. I think Brazil, but still. And so we have representation from each of the markets where we have publications. And what that was supposed to be was we have a couple of members in each market that sort of come together, and we have a forum, and we sort of discuss where we are, who we are, and what our mission is, what our outward mission is supposed to be globally. And so the beauty of this is that each market, each representative that we have in each of the countries is a sort of a diversity champion in their own right. They're hosting events, they're championing conversations, sort of what we're doing right now. They're facilitating diversity, having trainings, talking to staff, hosting events, and promoting the idea that there are other races other than just one that, are representative in this particular country. And so when we come together, it's like, yes, you do your things locally in your market, like in France, like they'll host a movie screening, or like in India, they'll host a drag show, or like in Brazil, they're hosting Black History Month, or in the UK, like they just finished hosting Black History Month. And those are all local events. So we'll come together and we'll say, all right, so what can we do globally on one accord that might make sense to loop in each of the markets into? Like last month, we had Diversity Month. And what we did was we had a series of conversations with global D&I leaders, really, across the globe, and they came and talked to us. We had, representation from India, representation from Brazil, and I think we had one from Mexico, all on one call. And we're just talking about the commonalities, amongst our respective markets, about what we experience, what we share, and what's ultimately different. So it's really a moment of normalizing diversity on a global scale. Like last year, for this year, our main mission was to incorporate global unconscious bias training for every single employed person across the globe for the company. That was my idea. And then also we did a global pay equity study where we sort of leveraged, where we could, race, ethnicity, education background and how much you got paid and what your job title was, just to sort of see if there was any common thread to say, if you had a white counterpart who made $75,000 here, are they making that, is a black person with that same job title making that same $75,000? And if not, can we get them all up to speed so that everybody can make the exact same thing? It's a very, very tricky process, and we're still in the midst of it. The report just came out a month ago, but it's mainly just to be the start of a conversation of how do we make this company equitable for every single employed person on a global scale. So that's pretty much the point and mission of the council at this stage.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Of course.
That's awesome. As a Black woman, for me, I like really appreciate that there is, if I'm looking for a job and I'm searching for employment, I know that there's people who are like me and have been where I'm about to be, and they're fighting for me. And so I appreciate that as a Black woman. I know many other people of color do as well. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
So the job market that we're wanting to enter, so this is Mass Comm Week. So we have a lot of mass communication students here and present with us. It's a very precarious job market to be entering, and there's more anxiety in the field, especially nowadays, for people of color. And there's, representation issues, there's equal pay options, like you said. So are you seeing any tension in the industry? And if so, or if not, what advice would you give students who are about to enter the job field and looking for a position?
Well, I mean, I'll just keep it real. You're students of color. It's not just a Black thing or a Hispanic or Latinx thing or an Asian thing. You're students of color. This is the perfect time to start networking and putting yourself out there. I reference Acosta again for reaching out, on LinkedIn. It's just taking that opportunity and that risk and saying, hey, listen, this is my skill set and this is what I've been doing. And I always have something that you've been doing. Always. Write something, a blog, an Instagram feed, whatever it is that you can put your work into. Always have something to reference, because even when I was starting out at that school newspaper in New York, it was like, have some retail experience, for Christ's sake. Just have something in your background to say, I've done something, and say, look, share your resume and say, hey, I'll start over. The main mission, I think, right now for any college student that's coming out, have written something that's of substance that you love, whether it's with a local artist, whether it's with something with the local newspaper, whether it's with something with the school newspaper, whatever it is. You have to have at least that bit of ambition to have done something or have some kind of connection to say, listen, I'm talented and I'm going to show that. So have somewhat of a small portfolio together. But once you do that, you have to let your voice take you, whether that's on LinkedIn. And people always like make fun of this, but if you have like a masthead from a magazine, email everybody you think you need to email on that masthead and say, listen, you don't know me and I kind of know you because I saw your name, but this is my resume and this is, the qualities that I possess. Can we even just have a conversation? Can we set up a moment to 10 minutes to just have an audience, and success story here. When I was interning, I would see Anna Winter walking the building, and I'm like, oh my God, it's her. Wow, okay. And after I got over being starstruck, I said, I need to meet this woman. I came all this way to meet this woman and work for her eventually. I need to say something. So I hand wrote a letter at work and I typed it up and, block form, formatted, typed it, signed it. And I said, I've admired your work and all this, blah, blah, blah. And I would love to just have a 10-minute conversation with you just as an introduction. And sent it in her office because it was in the same building. And a month later, her assistant reached out and said, hey, Anna would love to meet with you. Do you have time when you can meet? And I said, oh my God, this is happening. Wow, okay. And so we met, and it was a 10-minute meeting and it was just informative. We just sat, I said, hello, we introduced ourselves, we talked. And it was like, after 10 minutes, she said, okay, well, that was great, and it was so funny. The conversation that we had in that meeting was about inclusivity and incorporating more people of color in the pages, because a lot of people of color that read Vogue did not feel included. And she was very much so like, well, I don't really know what you want me to do. But I say all that to say, in that moment, I don't think she understood what I was saying. And then to come to it, 10 years later, I have her personal number in my phone, and she told me to call her whenever we want because she's the chair of the council with me, you know? So it's like, you have to get the lay of the land and network where you can really early on and understand the territory that you're in. And I didn't use that story to brag, but I used it to say, if you want something, you have to be unafraid to speak up and vouch for yourself, which is what I mean when I say set up a meeting with anybody you think you can and email them until you get a response. That was always the thing they told me in school. Like, people can only say no to you. So if you're like interested in something, knock, knock, knock until they open that door. When they do, they may say, I'm busy. You knock yourself in and you say, look, let's chat. I'm who you need to know. You're laughing. No, I'm really serious though, because otherwise you are just another resume in a pile. And that's something that as a Black person, we've always just been another number in the system. And we have to start advocating for ourselves and pushing let me stop saying Black. As a person of color, we have to start advocating for ourselves and pushing for ourselves to be in these spaces that were not designed for us, because they were not. And once you get to that point where you can be, let yourself just flourish. You know?
That is so true. That is like that
Yeah.
last line. It really does, because it's, when you think about it, it's an industry that we're still, busting elbows into. And so it's really inspiring to see someone who's older than us to be like, hey, I've got plenty of bruises to show how many doors I've knocked myself into.
The blood, sweat, and tears, like, don't let anything fool you, okay? Like, it's been a hard road and the industry is very, very cold, but I think that you guys are in such a great position right now because you are in a virtual space. You don't have to be anywhere, and I think for us too, and don't quote us here, but we're trying to work on an internship program, or restarting an internship program that's going to be a lot better than the previous internship program because I'm spearheading it. But we want to make it so that if you are remote, that you're able to be a part of this program and not have to live in New York and have to worry about New York rent and New York costs. And, you can still make the connections and do the projects and get the writing experience out that that you would need, to have a really great portfolio by the time that you graduated. But let's say you're graduating now, start sending those resumes out. Teen Vogue, one of my best friends is the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, and they're always looking for stories. They're always looking for writers. They're always looking for fresh new talent. So if you guys have that vigor and that excitement, shoot some emails off. You have all the Instagram handles and they love getting DMs. So
I'm definitely taking notes as I'm moderating this right now. So I have one more question for you before we open it up to the group. So for the group, if any of you guys have any questions you'd like to ask Charles, when the time comes, you can use your raise your hand function, or you can chat me your question and I can ask him too. So all up to you. But for my last question, how do you see our industry changing in the next 5 years?
Ooh, I think honestly, there's just going to be a lot more opportunity for you to not have to be in an office. This virus, I hate to say it, and I mean no disrespect to anyone that has been affected, but it's been somewhat of an open door to allowing more opportunity to be in more places that you would not be able to be in otherwise. And it's sort of reduced privilege. I'm sorry, let me laugh. It reduced the idea that you have to be of a certain status to be someplace in order to prove your worth in an industry that was not designed for you. Now, I'm in Texas right now. You know what I mean? I'm with all of you in Texas right now, and I'm really not. And I think that's the beauty of it. So I think as companies are reevaluating their real estate and where their offices are, this is the time for you to be like, look, I'm great right where I am on the ground. And I think more companies are going to start to do that. So that's how I think the industry is going to change. I think that, the only downside is that, at least for us, we're working a lot more now because there's no commute time. There's no lunch time because you're always online. Nobody knows where you are specifically. So, I mean, productivity's up. Morale is lower than what it used to be because there's no human communication as much as there used to be. But I think as far as you getting a job, I think that there's going to be a lot more opportunity for you to be able to sit right where you are and to be able to flex your muscles and be as talented as you are. So that's what I think, but don't quote me. Yeah.
So for questions, Akosua, I know that you have a question. So if you want to unmute and then go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say that I really appreciate your story because you said that you've been like preparing to be in like the fashion industry, and now you're in the fashion industry and in a diversity position. Whereas like although I am like a mass comm major and I've been doing mass comm things at school, what I've been doing is diversity work, which like worries me because I'm like, how am I gonna use this background to get into mass comm? And like you talk about like preparing for one thing and then getting something else. How I'm curious as to how it's going to look for me who has been preparing to do diversity work and then trying to get into fashion and beauty and just
Okay.
yeah.
First of all, graduate. That's
Mhm.
the first step. Get your degree in whatever it is that you are hurtling toward getting your degree for, because that's what's going to be your entry point,
Mhm.
to wherever you go, is that you've had the education, the background, and you've shown that you can handle whatever's being thrown at you from a logistical standpoint. But as far as, the creative work is concerned, you're going to have to ask yourself what's more important to you, because I think you're going to come out of college like I did. You're a jack of all trades. You can write, you can produce, you can take good pictures, you can talk about diversity. You have a lot of experience in that. You can speak to certain topics. And I don't think that those things are going to go to waste. They'll never go to waste. And don't ever think that. I think that's a part of the anxiety that I heard when you spoke. It's like, I don't want to go into this with all of this experience, but then I don't want to miss all of that with this either. So
Mhm.
never think that the things that you've gained while you're learning and struggling while learning are going to be lost in the sauce somewhere. That's never going to happen. But what I will say is apply for every single thing that you think you want to apply for, and
Mhm.
realize which one is going to really utilize most of your skills. Because you could get a job right now, working as a fashion writer somewhere, and then all of a sudden you're like, I hate this. But guess what else experience you have that you can fall back on now?
Yeah.
And the exact vice versa. I would even say if you could find a job working, as a diversity and inclusion, officer or manager, whatever, and you want to write on the side freelance for Essence or for Teen Vogue or forever, do that too. It's all possible. But
Mhm.
what I don't want any college student or anybody younger than me to do is start letting the anxiety of what am I going to do take over your life, because you're too young for that right now. You're too young for that. Focus on getting your degree, focus on your internships, focus on getting your clips, do what you need to do to really make the best of your degree in college. And once you graduate, then we can worry about what that's going to look like and what a job is. Because the job, like we just talked about, the job market's going to change so much in the next couple of years. You don't know what's going to be out there. But all
Mhm.
you need to focus on is walking across that stage, getting that diploma, and letting your resume speak for itself. Because you already have a lot of references, I'm sure. So be proud of that, please.
Mhm.
Don't let it stress you out.
And I have one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned that you were seeing like job postings or like seeing these opportunities. Where were you seeing them?
I could share with you. So let me look. Actually, while I'm on the phone, I will share it. Like, there was a site that, mind you, this was 10 years ago, okay?
Mhm.
But there was a site. Is it still a thing? It might be. Actually, it is. Wow. Okay, I will share it in the chat. It is at 2010.com. Explore. I don't know what's on this site anymore, but like, I just sent it to you. It's literally ed2010.com. Or can I share it with the entire? Yeah, so you guys can share it privately. But that was where I saw a lot of them, and just internship postings and people who were just looking for, freelance this or need an assistant for a shoot, whatever, whatever, whatever.
Mhm.
Let me look and see if things are. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little jobs here. There's right here. I mean, there's still like right now, there's like I don't know what this is, but like Sisters Geographic, it's remote, but it's a two-paid in 2 months ago, and it was for an unpaid internship. So then there's like a digital internship at Harper's Bazaar that just got posted here as a paid internship. So there you go, explore that. And also, like I said, look at those mastheads. Samira Nazir, who just came from Vanity Fair as the executive fashion editor, she's now their editor-in-chief. So she's a woman of color as an editor-in-chief. So, you know, find the email format, shoot a note, find the fashion teams or the writing team, shoot them a note and be like, look, I'm interested. I go to Texas State, I'm an intern. I mean, I'm an aspiring intern, or I'm a college student. I want some credit. I want to work. You know, I can't give you all the tools, but I will say just be fearless in your approach. You have to be.
Okay.
I hope that answered that.
It did. That helped a lot.
Awesome. So do we have any other questions from the audience? If you want to raise your hand and I can call on you, or I can also always ask another question. I would love to. Let's see.
Well, look, just keep the train rolling, Aaron. Look, let's go.
I have more questions too. We can both just back and forth.
Spout them off.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. So, what have you seen as trending pieces of knowledge that students should pay attention to right now?
Honestly, I think I kind of already touched on it. Just having a breadth of your own work available to share at any given moment. You know, because I think, excuse me, in a lot of ways, there is this, and it's nobody's fault because I had it too, but there's a certain entitlement that comes with being a college student that you feel as though because I'm interested in this and I've majored in this, that opportunities are just supposed to fall out of the sky. And it's easy for me to just like say, okay, I want to be a writer. So now somebody came and knocked on my door and said, hey, do you want to be an intern? Do you want to be a writer? It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So it's in your best interest to do the work. And I hate to say that because it shouldn't be that way, but you have to learn how to connect and have relationships in your back pocket, you know, and just know that you're worth it, even though there's going to be 1,000 doors probably slammed in your face or a lot of emails that you're going to send that you may not get a response to, but it doesn't reflect on who you are. It's just a matter of constantly trying to get into some place that you want to be. And let me be the example to say it is so possible, okay? I was literally told there's no room at the inn, sweetie. Stop calling here. And 2 years later, I was there. And that was a few times, okay? So there's one piece of that trend is that I'll say is that don't let the ambition overshadow your ability to hit the ground running. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think it's also important to say that like your worth isn't defined by all of these different opinions. Like your worth is like it's yours, and what you create you should always be proud of, because the pride that you have in your work gives you that confidence to present it to so many different people. And I feel like that's a true thing whenever seniors graduate and then they're going off in the world. I feel like there's a lot of like when you get that first no or those first couple no's, it just hits a little bit
or
too
first
hard.
30. I mean, listen, you know, or first 50. Like I remember being in one of my classes, my capstone journalism classes toward the end, of my professor, I don't know, he was just feeling generous that day, but he came over and he said, look at Mr. Ellis here. He said, Mr. Ellis, do you have any connections in New York? I said, no. He said, do your parents do anything, you know, like a lawyer, doctor, judge with connections? I said, no. He said, so how did you manage to like get into this world? I said, I just emailed my butt off and hope for the best. And even when people didn't reply to those, I showed up. You know, I had a story with, her name was Ikram Goldman, and she was Michelle Obama's stylist before she became the first lady. And I wanted to profile her. She was in Chicago, and I was in Detroit, and it was a fashion assignment to, you know, to profile a fashion noteworthy individual. And I said, well, I want to interview this woman. So we emailed, and she never got back. So what did I do? I got on a train, I went to Chicago, and I showed up, you know, and when I walked in the door, I said, hi, I'm Charles. And she said, oh my God, I've been meaning to email you back, you know, and I got the story. But it's to say, like, you have to want it for yourself enough to get up and go to wherever that may be. And that train ticket was $20, okay? It was not like I got on a flight and flew across the country. I mean, I got there. And truth be told, it probably was a little bit crazy to do. But at the end of the day, that's what this journalism or media world is. It's getting what you need by any means necessary, you know? And yeah, yeah, that's it.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. Akoso, did you have another question?
I was a little curious about what your job like really looks like
Sure.
even before this summer.
I think for me, it's been a lot of events, especially dealing with Noir and then the Black Employee Network. A lot of events, a lot of community building, because I think for us, we hadn't really had a lot of a chance to get to know each other, you know, and that's from the Black editors in chief to the junior level staff to the mid-level staff to the entry level staff to the mailroom employees, the custodians, you know, everybody that is a Black person at this company. We had not had a chance to really see each other in one room. So my mission was to say, I want to have a family reunion every time that we link up, you know, and whether that's a happy hour, whether that is a screening of an event, a movie that's coming out, a lunch, just a, you know, we're all meeting in the cafeteria at noon, you know, whatever that may be. It's a lot of coordinating, a lot of schedules. And even last year, one of my biggest accomplishments was that we did the National Association of Black Journalists convention in Miami, and we want to do it again next year in Houston. See y'all. Ha. So, you know, it's that, it's coordinating, it's putting together a panel discussion, it's, you know, coordinating menus and coordinating, like, you know, it's just a lot of coordinating all the time and building and fostering relationships with these external companies. Like this year, we did a pro bono package where we offered some racial injustice organizations exclusive free paging in our magazines and in our digital publications. So we did the NAACP, we did the Color of Change, we did the Minnesota Freedom Fund, and we did the American Civil Liberties Union, and we got them all pages here. And the Breonna Taylor Vanity Fair issue, you know, and this was the first time a lot of them had ever really run in print at all, you know, so this was incredible for them to be able to be in these spaces they had never been in before. And it's, you know, going from scratch and saying, hey, my name is Charles. And it's all those skills that I learned in emailing are now coming in handy, because I'm like, I have to be the one to cold call these people and say, hey, we want to give you what, $250,000 worth of free advertising space. Can you get us some materials? And so it's that. It's literally answering 1,000 requests a day, you know, from employees who are going through something, who are being asked crazy questions or dealing with really extenuating circumstances. You know, it's just a lot of damage control. It's a lot of proactive conversations, talking to our executive leadership team about events or policies that we want to change or implement. Like we're revamping our hiring policies right now to make sure that all of our candidates that come in are being asked the exact same questions in interviews to come in as, you know, entry level or otherwise. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and it sort of falls, you know, under my purview, which I'm very proud of, but it's a lot of work. And I'm proud to do it, which is sort of what you were mentioning, you know, with the diversity track. It's hard, but how else would you have it right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so true. This has been such a fantastic meeting and fantastic panel. And I'm just so thankful for this opportunity to speak with you, Charles.
No, I'm grateful too. Do we have room for one more, or you want to wrap?
If we have one more question, we can do one more.
Yep. Do you have any tips for college students who are looking to like move? Because one thing that I want to do is like, I want to be gone. I want to travel and work other places.
Mm-hmm.
Amen, sister.
But all I have so far is the emotional support of my parents.
Okay.
So I'm just like, I don't know how to do this. My dad's an immigrant, but it's like, this is different.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I'll say if all you have is the emotional support, then you're going to really need to make the best of this virtual time that we have right now, so that when the world does open back up, quote unquote, open back up, and there may be an opportunity for you to get up and move, that you'll actually have a job to be able to fall back on that'll allow you to move there. We used to do this really stupid thing where we would like put, I was living in Michigan, but I would use my friend's address in New York on the resume, and they'd be like, yeah, I live there. And then they say, and they call you on a random Wednesday morning and say, hey, can you be in New York for an interview tomorrow? And you're like, yeah, I live down the street. Can't you tell? So it's like, it's best to just tell the truth and put where you actually live on your resumes and where you're coming from. But at the end of the day, if you cannot get up and physically go, make the best of this time that we're able to sit on virtual calls and talk to people that way. And like I said, in a couple of years' time, things may change drastically where you're able to go back into a physical office. And at that point, you can make a case and say, hey, listen, I've been working here, or, I've been looking for this, or maybe it may just involve you just applying for jobs in other cities, and I hate to say it, but it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
But you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it. And that's to all of you. You can do it. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't. Nothing's impossible. It's just hard.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, well, it's so good. So good. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rose, for showing, for being here and asking so many cool questions. And thank you, Nicole, for sitting in with us. And thank you, Charles, especially. Thank you, Charles, for being here.
I think of course. There's another question. Alyssa, do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to say,
hi, Alyssa.
I'm gonna try not to get emotional.
Don't, or actually do. Get emotional. Let it out. What's up?
We love emotions.
I just want to say, oh my God, like your speech just meant a lot, because being a person of color and a woman of color, it's a lot harder. Just want to navigate the world, but especially the industry that we're trying to get in. And like, I know myself, and I've had some classes with some of the people I see in here. Hey guys, but a lot of times, especially in the School of Journalism at Mass Comm, you do not see a lot of color at all. I am usually the only Hispanic in the class, and there's probably maybe 3 people of color, and the rest, well, we know. It's so, it can be discouraging, and it feels like, I'm used to this, but it's just still hard, because like you feel like you have to work so much more harder to even like be able to be in the room, or like to have like opportunities. I'm sorry, but like this was honestly like so needed and refreshing, because like, seeing someone do the damn thing and like, just being so candid and vulnerable with us and telling us like, hey, like you're gonna fall, like, and this is what happens, but like just keep going, like just keep going. Like honestly, like I needed to hear that. And sorry for getting emotional, but
no, don't apologize.
Don't be sorry.
Alyssa, what is
the reality of it?
Alyssa, what are you majoring in? What's your focus?
Electronic media and mass communication.
Are you kidding me? If you don't go to San Francisco and work at Wired, are you kidding me? That's where you need to be. Like, no, I feel like this. You as a woman of color, it is going to be harder. But guess what?
Yeah.
You still have talent. And that talent is going to show through just if not harder than everybody else's, because you're going to be the one that's in the room just right with them, like, hey, I'm just as good as you, if not better. You're going to bring that every single time. So, I've said this to myself too. It's like, I might be the only Black person here, but you're going to hear me speak every single time that there's something to say. And I'm going to make it Black. I'm going to make it obnoxious. I'm going to make it loud, and you're going to love it every single time. And for you, it's like, make it Latinx, make it loud, tell it from your perspective. Like, talk about your family, talk about your history, where you came from and how you got here. And don't allow, any intimidation or that you're the only person in that room to make you feel like you're not supposed to be. Because if you weren't supposed to be there, guess what? You wouldn't be there. And let that be a testament to all of you. In your classes now at university, in your internships and your jobs, no matter where you go, if you were not supposed to be there, you would not be. So because you're there, knock down all the walls. Yeah. Say everything that needs to be said. Go the distance. And if you don't go the distance, try your hardest, okay? So I'll leave it there, but I appreciate everything that you said, and I just wanted you guys to know that you are the future of this industry, but you have to go into it fearlessly. You may feel like, I heard a quote once, and I'll end on this. There's a quote once that said, there's gonna come a point in your career where you're gonna feel like, I have nothing, I have no resources, I have no connections, I have nothing. That's the perfect time to get started. That's the pressure cooker. Because now you get to manifest all of that. When I started out, when I was 19 at college and I just started and I was late registration and I was like taking those stupid gen ed courses, I had no connections, I had no resources, I had nothing. And look where we are now. So don't ever think that because you're a minority or that there's so many white kids or kids of privilege that are in this room that can have this with no effort, no nothing, that I don't deserve to be here. That definitely means that you deserve to be there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for your candidness. I really appreciate that, genuinely. And I want to thank all of you for being here today, whether live or asynchronous, for joining us for this amazing, amazing panel. And yeah, so again, have an awesome day and check out all of the other things we're doing in Mass Comm Week, all of the other sessions we're having, all available at txstatemcweek.com. Bye.
All right, bye guys. Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much, Charles. Have a great day.
Too. Bye.